Same second, and I got it. Probably cost me, you know what I mean? Let's see.
But
Something right.
oh, this is a picture of us. You should wait for this cereal until after his class.
I don't care, whatever you think. Should I go out? Zoom.
It should be it.
Have it in the oven.
Let's see that. What's in here? So,
What are you doing over there?
get the seeds.
Oh, you put the seed.
That's good. Oh.
Perfect. Yeah, I did it. I'm going. I'm not going yet.
What?
Hello.
Hello,
Ah, it sounds like David.
it is David.
Hi, David. I'm in Maryland,
Oh.
but I'm not getting any video here. What do I do to do that? I don't know. I feel like you, like a newbie. I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Well, I still don't have any idea what I'm doing. I have a picture of me and I have a picture of a telephone.
Oh, okay. Well, now how do I get the video?
And I got
Stephanie, how
your
do I-
voice.
Yeah.
It
on
says
this-
finale, Moses' last blessings in his passing. Meeting ID, host, passcode, invite link, participant ID, encryption. You are connected
Oh,
to
video.
Zoom Global via data centers in the United States.
Oh, because I'm on the
You
phone.
called in, you didn't go through a
Oh.
web browser.
Oh, I didn't go through the web browser. Okay. All right, whatever.
We got his voice. Lost his voice.
I'm not
As long
dressed
as I
anyway.
get Mendy, as long as I hear Mendy, it's fine. I don't have to see him.
Yeah, we know
See
what
him
he
every
looks like.
See him every Saturday.
Is my name up on the screen?
Good morning.
Ah,
Huh?
there's Mendy. Good morning.
Good morning.
You came and went. I hear your voice, but I don't see your face.
Talking about me?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I got to pull the blinds. One second.
Hey, Mendy, it's Steve.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Good, I'm in Maryland. Jean's granddaughter's first birthday.
Enjoy.
His wife's.
We are
Oh,
heading
for
back
sure.
today. Oh, and they live in a lake community here with a gazillion families.
Yeah.
And her son, Lior, was out walking yesterday, and there was a woman walking towards him who had a Hebrew University T-shirt on.
Yeah.
And turns out she was the first and only resident of God knows how many hundred houses here who's Jewish.
Oh.
She was so excited. Now we can have a Hanukkah party with a neighbor, but adding whipped cream to the pie, she goes to, what is it, Rabbi Lapkus? Who is it in Frederick? Starts with an L.
With in Frederick, Maryland. What did you say, Lapkowski?
Yeah, something like that.
With an L?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't keep track of them anymore, but
Yeah, of course I met him last time I was here. I had to get a local tchotchke for my collection, but yeah, so it turns out that she goes there, except that she goes to the conservative shul for the Hebrew school. But it was just interesting. Out of all the, oh, Stephanie? Oh, I was going to find out how many houses are. There's a lake community and there's 4 separate sections. So there must be 300 or 400 homes here. And they're here 30 years and they're the only Jews in the whole place.
who's there 30 years?
This woman that her
Oh,
son
the
ran
woman, yeah.
into.
Bluetooth mode.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
whose
see who's
daughter made
Chabad.
Aliyah. Went to Hebrew University, made Aliyah. So it's like finding a needle in a haystack, you know. It's still on? I don't hear anything. Okay, what happened to this?
Yeah, it's Lapkowski.
Ah, here we go.
Yeah.
Am I still connected?
I don't know which Lapkowski he is. I'm sure he's a nice guy.
What? Just a joke.
Yeah, he's got a nice place there. So I don't know if you heard what I said. Her daughter went to Hebrew University, made Aliyah.
Yeah, I heard that. Baruch
Yeah,
Hashem, we got
yeah.
Jews everywhere. Yiddelach.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's like finding a needle in a haystack here. You should see this
Yep.
place. It's very interesting, very pretty.
So you're set to move to Maryland?
What's that, David?
I said, then are you all set to move to Maryland?
No. My financial advisor says you're almost at the point where you could pack it in, but now with the rising prices and inflation, and God knows what's going to happen with our friend in the White House, you better keep working for a while. And thank God we're very busy. I'm so jammed up. You know a guy named Lloyd Bennett? An attorney?
Isn't that the fellow who owned the airport in New York, Lloyd Bennett Field, or is it Floyd Bennett?
Yeah, that's Floyd. Yeah, no, he's got a case involving he's got a case involving a guy that got run over by a truck down at Port Newark, and we're doing some work on that. So I'm keeping pretty busy, fortunately. So in fact, I'm going to raise my prices a little bit and maybe cut down on the volume, because the last 2 weeks I've been in the office at 7 and then packing it in at 1, 2 in the morning to get
That's
stuff
crazy.
done. So, yeah, I know somebody who goes in Sunday mornings at 3 o'clock to his office to meet
I was
clients.
there this morning,
I know.
but I try
No.
not to stay that late.
Yeah, well, look, I did two videos, day in the life type videos, in the last 2 weeks. I got them done in 2 weeks, and usually I tell people I want a 4-week lead time for one, but I did 2 at the same time in 2 weeks.
Not the same
So
person.
No, Gennardi, that feeds me a lot of work from both their Newark and New York offices, and a guy from Elizabeth, representing a couple that drove off the Parkway in Cranford into the Rollaway River and flipped over, and the 2 people drowned.
Jeez.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So I had to interview all the family members, and tears were flowing. And I picked up video off the internet from the news media and edited it all together. Then we had 2 people who got trampled on in Las Vegas during the mass shooting a few years ago. They didn't get shot. They weren't at the concert, but they were in the lobby of the hotel, and they got trampled by the people who were running from the shooter.
I guess the claim is lack of
That's
security.
What's that?
The claim is lack of security or proper security.
Yeah, there was, and then they wanted to stay an extra night after being in the hospital, and the hotel wanted to charge them $300. They wouldn't cop them a room for one more night.
That's chutzpah.
Amazing.
Mendy, are you going to give us a preview of next week's topic since you're changing topics?
I'd like to have a little bit of feedback on what the topic's going to be. Actually, next Sunday, I can't do it. I have an unveiling deep out in Long Island. So, but you know, we can work with looking at the year ahead. We got to think of something.
I thought you're going to do Torah portion every week.
What did you say?
I thought you're doing Torah portion every week.
You know, the Jewish world does a Torah portion every week, year after year. We can do that, and we can do it coming from different angles, and maybe try to relate it more to current events. Although that's, that's a kind of
I see.
a delicate.
I actually enjoyed the way things were for the past 6-8 months. I thought the way you brought the meaning behind Torah portion was fantastic. I thought it was far better than we had in the past when we were in person.
I agree.
And the name Trump didn't come up at all.
Fantastic. That's even better.
So
one should never say his name.
We can, I didn't mean to bring it up that way.
Yes.
So we can definitely we can go to Torah again. I mean, I admit perhaps we could try and focus on just a few things. I've been trying to give an overview of the Torah portion every week so that we touch all the bases, or most of the bases, and even though different people might join, but maybe we could just focus on 1, 2, 3 elements and take it a little bit deeper. And maybe I could send out some texts about that. I mean, we just come into the Torah portion, try and take it a level deeper. That's one option.
That's probably a good idea.
Someone mentioned the idea of studying Tanya on a weekly basis. I'm okay with that too. I'm a Tanya kind of guy. I don't know if you can respond to that, because I don't know if anybody knows exactly what, has a grip on the whole idea of Tanya. Tanya is the fundamental textbook of Chabad thought. So it's definitely more spiritual, and there's a more mystical end to it. But it's really about the soul and the soul journey, and the soul, and I guess somewhat about life. The struggle of self-discipline. That's what we can call it that.
That's intriguing.
But I thought we need more understanding and education of the basics, and what
Say
you were
again?
able.
I missed what you said, Gadi.
I thought we need more understanding of the basics, as you were trying to bring to us for the past 6 to 8 months.
So you prefer to stick with basics?
Yes, I'm a simple Jew. Not
I'm
one
also
of
a
those,
simple Jew.
not
Glad to
one of
meet
the
you.
fancy educated Jews. I'm a simple guy. So I think we're so still, there is so much to learn from the basic Torah.
I'm good with that. I would put out there that the founder of Chabad, when he wrote his book, he called it the book for average people.
Yes.
So maybe his average is a little different, not our average, but anyway, something we could see. Maybe I could also. I mean, it whether you know it or not, it's coming out in a lot of what I say all the time anyway. But
Mendy?
we can move with it. So I guess it's already late enough for us to start. I'm going to mute all, just to minimize any background noise. Please unmute yourselves if you want to ask, add, whatever you're doing. Okay. So we're bringing the Torah to a conclusion. There are technically 53 Torah portions in the Torah. We have done, between us this past year, 51. So there's 2 more for us to cover. The final 2 Torah portions in the Torah. And because the Torah, as we've discussed, is framed in a chronological framework of starting from creation of the world, then through the 40 years of the Jews in the desert, and it ends, as far as the chronology of it, the narrative, it ends with Moses' passing, which is shortly before the Jews, about 4 weeks before the Jews go into Israel. It ends with Moses' passing. And the 5th book of the Torah, as we discussed, it's all the last 5 weeks of Moses' life. Last few Torah portions are all the last day of Moses' life, and these final 2 Torah portions are all the last day of Moses' life. Just interesting for our own. I like to throw in things for our own. There's a good word for it, but I don't know what it is at the moment. But just for our Jewish fun facts of our knowledge of nuts and bolts, the final Torah portion is read every year on Simchas Torah. This year that will be Wednesday morning, outside of Israel. And in Israel, everything's done on Tuesday, and we have 2 days, 2-day holidays for the Israel's 1-day holidays, and we have Wednesday morning is the reading of the final Torah portion. It's a very small Torah portion. It's called V'zos HaBracha, the blessing of Moses to the tribes, and his passing. And on Simchas Torah, we also read the first part of Genesis. We start over again, which is a Torah, a practice, a time-honored practice in Torah life for as long as we've been around, as far as anyone knows, that even when we complete a tractate of Talmud and there's a celebration, we actually start the next one, and we learning never ends is the way we'd frame it. And therefore we start again. So Simchas Torah, we end the Torah, and we take out another Torah, and we start it all over again. And then the following Shabbos, we read the whole Torah portion. The only Torah portion not read on a Shabbos, because the practice is that we read one every weekend, every Shabbos, go through the entire Torah, except when that Shabbos is on a holiday, like yesterday, it gets bumped for the holiday. But all the Torah portions are read on a Shabbos going through the year, except for the final one, because the final one is reserved for Simchas Torah only, and Simchas Torah actually can never fall on a Shabbos. So even if it did, that would be more incidental, so to speak. So the two that we have left, what we read 2 weeks ago, and what we're reading on this coming Wednesday, are two Torah portions about which are all about when Moses' death. So the final one that's read on the Shabbos it's called Ha'azinu, and it's like a poem, a song. And actually, I was going to try and share a screen here. I can figure out how to do that. Just show you how it shows up in the Torah, since I'm doing our Torah fun facts. 1 second. Let's see. It's not coming up here. Let me try it again. 1 second. Let me try this again. Are you able to see that? Are you able to see anything? Or did I just get rid of all of you? You didn't see anything, did you? Oh, actually, yeah. You
No,
can't,
didn't see
I
anything.
can't hear you. Yeah, okay. Oh, here it is then. No, wrong one.
Success.
But that's actually the wrong one.
Oh.
Success with the wrong thing. Hang on a second. I'm sorry. I know it's in here, so I should be able to get it. But I'm going to stop the share. I don't want to waste our time. Just getting one more shot here. Oh, that's okay. I messed it up. Now let me try this again. Try one more time. If not, we'll go first. Here it is. This is the way it appears in the Torah scroll. Any of you have ever seen the inside of a Torah scroll? It's straight text. And so it would be, a sentence here, whatever. And there can be breaks, paragraphs every once in a while for what we call parshas. I think I have shown you that once. 2 places in the Torah when the text is called a song. One is the song of when the Jews sing to God, what's called the Aziyashir. This song of the Jews when they come out of the Sea of Reeds on the way out of Egypt, and the sea has split and they come to the other side and the Egyptians have drowned there. There's a song we actually recite it every day in our prayers. It appears in the Torah also in these columns, and that's the Torah layout format for a poem or a song. And Moses' final song, so to speak, or poem, that we read, he recites and shares the day of his death, is also written in the Torah. This is the way it appeared in the Torah reading 2 weeks ago. Okay, so now back to regularly scheduled programming. So the Hazinu is a song, but the idea is that, in other words, there's a certain there's a certain ambiance to when something has a song. There's something it's uplifting, and there's a certain I guess artistry to it when we call it, and then that's why there's a different font. And in this one, there is, even though it's a song, and a song by definition Torah wise, really it means that at some level it's supposed to be uplifting. The content of it has a lot of reminders about consequences in life. and not always happy ones. Although it ends off with the idea of Mashiach, and that ultimately, there's we're in God's hands, and that we are ultimately in a state of security with God going forward, no matter what we're going through, and things they don't always even out in human life, but we're with God. This song, so to speak, Hazinu, was recited when there was a temple. It was recited every single Shabbos, every single Saturday. It was split into 6 sections, and every single Saturday during the offerings, during what was called the Musaf offering, every Saturday in a synagogue, at least the ones I know of, there's a regular service, and then there's something called Musaf. On holidays also Musaf. Musaf means additional, because the prayers mirror the offerings that were brought in the temple, and there was one every morning, and therefore we pray every morning. And then on holidays, on Shabbos, there was an additional one. An additional offering was called the Musaf offering, and therefore we pray an additional offering, and we call that the Musaf prayer. So we don't have a temple now. But when there was the Musaf offering on Shabbos, every Shabbos, the Levites, who were the orchestra and the choir, they would sing a 1/6 of the Torah portion of Ha'azinu. So it obviously, Torah-wise, it has a certain centrality to life, and they split it into 6. But one of the insights into it is that the idea that that Moses is telling the Jews that they have been given a gift by God with with guidelines and potential for a meaningful life, no matter where they are, and no matter what they do, and no matter what their skills are, they have potential for a meaningful life. And life, by definition, does have challenges, but we're never alone in those challenges. And ultimately, we're in God's loving and trustworthy hands. So it's like the flow of a week. A week has ups and downs, and ultimately we come to Shabbos and we try to unburden ourselves of the stress part of the struggle, and glean the meaning of the fact that we hopefully responded properly to the struggles, and the parts where we could do better, we resolve better for next week. So the week is a unit of time which has a specific flow, and take for granted that Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday are probably not necessarily going to be identical. Some strong points, some lesser points, and ultimately it's a week, and it ends in Shabbos. So that's the Hazinu. In a similar vein, is split into 6. Every single Shabbos, we get into that mode of the recognition that life is a journey, and maybe this week was not an easy one, but that's just one part. It's 1/6, so to speak, of the larger weekly flow, and God willing, the coming week will be better, and ultimately we're always in God's hands. So the Hazinu is something that, yes, it's beautiful because it's Moses' last day, and it's poignant in that way, and it's meaningful in that way, but it was seen in Jewish practice to be meaningful beyond that, but really as a template for life, and every Shabbos it was remembered. So the Hazinu, because we're going to speak about both those Torah portions today to complete the Torah. So the Hazinu begins, Moses says, I am calling heaven and earth as my witnesses. It begins, listen, heavens, and hear me, earth. What does that mean? He's saying, I'm going to die. And you look at me, I've been with you. I'm your parent figure. I'm your leader. I've seen the beauty and the ugly. I gave you your Torah. I know exactly, I know where we stand, and I want to be a part of your conscience going forward, but I'm going to die. You're not going to see me anymore. So, but my soul's around, but it's easy to forget a soul. So I am calling heaven and earth as my witness. When you wake up in the morning and you see heaven and earth, you see a world, remember they are witnesses to what I'm telling you today. That you will do best in life if you're loyal to your purpose, and remember the God who loves you, who creates you and loves you, and is giving you guidance to be the best you, and to be able to make this a truly meaningful life. Just going to pick a few of the verses that are there in the Torah. One of them is a verse which is recited, at least again, I can't speak for the whole Jewish community because I don't know what the whole Jewish community does, but I could say that in traditional Judaism, there's a verse that's global, that this is part of every funeral service. Funeral service doesn't have that much built in. It's more about a sermon and people's recollections. So there's not much that you can have the Kaddish and the memorial prayer. Then there's a verse, and there's actually a prayer, but it starts off with a verse of what Moses says in this last time. He says, Hatzur Tamim Pa'alo, that God is our rock and perfect in his ways. None of us are perfect, but we're not God. He's saying God is perfect, and God does no evil. And that's an important thing. I think you can understand why it's part of a funeral service when it's a type of pain, deep pain it could be, and the grief. That's probably the image of the greatest human loss we have. And for a believer in God to say, like, why, God, you love me, you're able, you can get this done. Why did this have to happen? Why did I have to lose this loved one? And Moses' words echo that, as a matter of faith, doesn't answer the question, but it does. What it does say is that, notwithstanding the questions, the reality that Moses lays out there is that we're created by an infinite God, and we are finite beings, and we cannot understand God's ways. And we should never forget, never unplug from the idea that Hatzur Tamim Pa'alo, God is our rock, and ways are perfect, and God does no evil. Humanity does evil, and God leaves space for human free choice. But that's a different theological avenue to go down. We're talking about God. And he tells us that the Jews, again, on the day he's going to pass away himself. Another verse that resonates, it's in our daily prayers, is it says that it doesn't translate easily, but it's that Jacob, in other words, we as the Jewish people are connected. We're like God's rope. Which is an odd term. What does that mean exactly? How would you translate it? So, but that's what it literally says. So to use the literal words, there's an imagery there. If I'm down here and I'm connected with a rope to someone or to something at the top of the roof, by me pulling the rope, hopefully I can pull that other element closer. And the idea is that we have, through our life, through Torah, through mitzvahs, through leading a good life, we have the ability to pull godliness closer to us. That's not God's up there somewhere past Pluto, but God, the idea is that God is connected to us, and we can bring more godliness into our life. And then there's another element which is found in Hasidic thought, in Tanya, as we mentioned before, is that if I'm on a roof and I am hanging there's a long rope that's going down to the ground. If I shake it from the roof, it's going to wiggle down at the bottom, and maybe no one can even see that I'm up there on the roof, but they could just see the wiggling. And that is the idea, that our souls are seen as always connected to God. We're not just created by God and we're distant, but he loves us, he's watching us. But there's this umbilical cord that's always connected to God, and the rope, so to speak. And from time to time, God shakes the rope, and we may feel, we don't know why. Maybe you're driving down 78, maybe you're in the middle of playing tennis, maybe you're just in the shower. But you think about something doing doing the right thing. Maybe there's a spark of consciousness of, I mean, I think we always think about doing the right thing, but we get a little deeper, and maybe I want to do something a little bit more Jewish. Now, someone showed up in here Friday night, the girl in her late 20s, and she said she remembers as a kid that so her sukkah, and she had a desire to come and see a sukkah because it's she's going through something in her life. She had this idea. I didn't give it to her. I don't think anyone gave it to her, but maybe that's God shaking the rope, and I think that God shakes the rope for each of us in different ways. So that's another way of understanding the verse of Yaakov Hevel Nachaloso, that Jacob is the rope of God's. We'll call it inheritance, but of God's connection. Another thing that Moses tells us for going for the future, and I think it's something, in my opinion, it's something that has been borne out time and again. He says that the Jews will get fat. You can decide what you want with fat. He's not talking about body shape. We'll get fat and then rebel. And that is something that we've seen, historically. I've seen in my own life, I think, but just in a little slice I'm watching and experiencing. But through history, it's there's no. They say there are no atheists in foxholes, which is probably not true. But the idea is that pressure and difficulties open one up more to God or any rabbit's foot. I'll take what I can get, and certainly there are people who have who I've gotten to know, have very good friendships with, but I got to know them in times of crisis, and when things were flying high, I don't think they had much use for a rabbi. So I understand it. So I think so. Moses does say that getting fat is something that the idea that we pray that everything go well. And we turn to God and say, I want blessing in my life. At the same time, we have to recognize that, God willing, we should get the blessing, but we shouldn't forget God. We asked God. There was a time of crisis. We turned to God, and then we think we've got a blessing. Sometimes it's good to remember the crisis mode the day after the blessing, when the crisis mode is no longer there, but say, I was in a tough spot, and God was there for me. So, how do I want to think about this? And I don't want to spend too much time in this, but I remember many years ago. Today I can say many years ago. It's got to be 25 years ago. Someone here who no longer lives here, but he called me from early one morning and asked him where he is. He's a good friend, and he said he's in an airport in Chicago. So cool, because I had just seen him Shabbos, and I think it was Monday morning, and I said, "Oh, so when did you get there? When did you go?" He said, "I just can you answer a question? Tell me, am I alive? How would I know if I'm dead?" He said, "How would I know if I'm dead?" I said, "I can tell you pretty clearly you're not dead." So how would you know? So I found out later there was a movie, Sixth Sense, and where apparently someone was living a life. So I have, to me, it was just totally out of place. What do you mean? So I say, you're sitting next to someone, yeah, it's just pinch them, see if they will slap you. You're alive. How did you get to Chicago? Cargo. So I really didn't know what he was asking. Then he said to me that morning, early in the morning, he was taking a flight he was on his way to Newark Airport, and it was raining, and he hit a patch of water, and he did two 360s in the middle of Route 78. He says, I know there were cars around me, and I don't know how I survived that. And so I understood the trauma. I got a little more serious about it. And then I asked him, so what was going through your mind when you were gone, it was terrifying. And he said, I was thinking about it. He told me about his wife and the kids, and how they'll find the assets, and how they'll be, just obviously very quick. So I said, look where your mind went. I said, it's trust me, you're alive, and thank God you're alive. But not that you have to revisit the trauma every day, but to remind yourself of what was so important to you when you thought you were looking at the end of your life. It's important. I think that we all take for granted things, and it's to not to bring the trauma forward, but bring the lessons of the trauma forward is a healthy thing. So the idea of Jews get fat and then rebel, it doesn't mean we shouldn't get fat. If we turn to God and say, please make us successful, but we don't want the success to become something that it coats our sensitivities and our sense of connection, our sense of gratitude, and only remember God when the next crisis hits. We want to remain conscious, and it's healthy to recall difficult patches we went through and how Baruch Hashem we made it through, assuming that's the case. Okay. Torah, Moses ends off this part of the song. He says that Torah is your life, your very life. And the idea is that Torah is, obviously you have a lot of things to life, but Torah is truly meant, and I think truly can be seen as a guidebook for life. There is a proper response in Torah thinking for anything that comes your way. And it's to look through a Torah lens is to approach Judaism with a meaningful lens. One of the things I miss most about the Rebbe's presence and speaking is that he always had, to my feeling, and obviously to many others, he always had a very meaningful, grounded response to challenges of life. There are so many things where I think, okay, we're doing our best, but he had a very good grip on a logical Torah-based response to life. And they're there, just have to be able to find it. But Torah is our life. There's never going to be the axiom is there's never going to be a situation in life where Torah is not going to give us a healthy response, a moral healthy response, godly response. Okay. So Moses finishes the song, and then Joshua, who is his designated successor, stands up, and the Torah doesn't say this clearly, but the Talmud tells us, and it's insinuated in the Torah, Joshua repeats the exact same song, word for word. And a reason for that, and is a very human psychological reason, is that Moses understood, God understood, that in human nature, humans don't like, people like to do what they want. And accepting a leader is not an easy thing. So for
Rabbi, you're still with us?
Good question.
my computer
right.
has a mind of its own. I didn't do anything. Okay, can you hear me now? Just not.
Yeah, the last thing you said that accepting the leader is very difficult.
Gennady, yep, it's very difficult, and we've seen it in in Jewish life in many ways. And, you know, you can see in Chabad, when the Rebbe passed away, he didn't have a designated leader for the heir, or for successor, for whatever reasons that are, you know, we can only speculate. But people don't, generally don't like, it's also a Talmudic axiom. People prefer, not anarchy, but let me do my own thing. And that part of a leader is leaving space for someone to do their own thing within the parameters of where they're being led. But the idea of how Moses is careful of establishing Joshua's authority, to me, it tells me that in some ways we really haven't changed much. He was worried about the Jews accepting Joshua. I would worry about the same thing today. So, but he went to, you know, as far as he could go, because he's gonna have to die. He had Joshua not just being given the mantle, functioning as a leader while he's there watching. So it had more standing, and the truth is that the Jews did accept him. Okay. Now, that ends the second to last Torah portion, and now into the Torah portion we're going to be reading Wednesday. It begins with, this is the blessing that Moses gave to each tribe. 12 tribes, and he gives a blessing to each tribe. So we had, when Jacob passed away, at the end of the first book of the Torah, Genesis, it ends with to say he's on his deathbed and he blesses his children, who are the progenitors of all the tribes. His 12 sons are all the tribes. There, the blessing is more as a father. Here, the blessing is as a leader, Moses as a leader. But in a way, it's a replay and matching up, comparing the blessings of Jacob to the progenitor of the tribe, with Moses' blessing to the tribe going forward in history, is an interesting exercise, and it's one that is done. And one of the things that Torah, that Moses says in his blessing to the Jewish people, as in general, before he gets into the tribe, is he says that Torah is their inheritance. And I may have mentioned this before, but I think that it's an important thing for us to bear in mind. It's actually, there's a verse that's in our daily prayers right when we get up. It's Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Ma'ashaki Elat Yaakov. It's one of the first blessings we teach a child in nursery, kindergarten. It's that Moses gave us the Torah, and it is our inheritance. And an inheritance is an important framing. And I tell this to all the bar and bat mitzvah kids when we meet privately in studying, because I think it's an important lesson for every Jew to bear in their mind going as they go out into the world, especially if they're not living in an observant community, they're not feeling totally connected to a community, they're not big synagogue goers and so on. When God gives us a Torah, Moses transmits a Torah, there's a transaction going on there. So in general, Torah thinking, there's three different ways of transaction. There's buying, and so you sell me something. For you to sell me something, you have to be willing, and primarily I have to be willing to pay your price. It's how much do I want it. And if I'm willing to pay the price, you'll let it go. There's a gift where it's all on you. So you decide to give me a gift. It's nothing I can do really or should do if I have any class to try to get you to give me a gift. And then there's something that really, it depends on nobody. It happens naturally, and that's the inheritance. We think of a will. And a will certainly has legitimacy and value Torah-wise, but a will in Torah thought, in the way we do it, is a gift. It's a gift that takes place. It takes hold after a person passes away, but it's a gift. Inheritance in Torah thinking is that even if there's no will, there's nothing stated. Torah tells us that things pass from generation to generation. The person had no. I have kids, right? So I've made no, at this point in my life, I've made no wish known about, who gets my baseball cards, or whatever is going forward. I should sell them already. The going forward, and the kids don't have to ask for it or want it. Maybe they don't want my stuff. There's a natural flow. The Hebrew word for a will is nachla. And nachla means literally a river, because it flows from generation to generation. And while God did give us a Torah, it's a gift. And while we can acquire the Torah through study and hard work, so the framing of gift or purchase does apply to Torah. Fundamentally, Torah it comes to us naturally. It flows from generation to generation. If your mother was Jewish, you're a Jew whether you want to be or not. You can check in, you can't check out. And I tell this to the kids all the time, and I would say it to adults also. I just don't have bar mitzvah times with them. It's being a Jew. There's nobody 99% Jewish and no one 101% Jewish. You're Jewish, you're Jewish. And if you're converted properly, you're also 100% Jewish. There's nothing, there's no lesser than. But to talk about the flow, because we see, with a convert, we would see that person is also born with a soul that's Jewish, but it complicates the conversation. Let's just talk about born Jews right now. And I'll say this to kids: when you were born, you were in the hospital. No one asked your parents whether they want you to have their DNA. It just happens, and no one asked you whether you want their DNA, because it doesn't make a difference. It's yours. It's who you are. Judaism is your spiritual DNA, and it's wherever you are, any part of the world, and you are a part of that. And there's a Jew somewhere. That Jew is your cousin, and there's a Jewish community. You belong there somehow, and it's your Judaism doesn't go away with time. And so if someone says, because I hear it, I haven't been there for 40 years. I think my membership expired. It doesn't happen. We're always part of that, because it's part of our DNA. We're always part of a family. I'll always be my parents' child, and I'll always be my sibling's sibling. And if I decide, God forbid, never to talk to them again, that's my choice. Doesn't mean I'm not a sibling. Doesn't mean I'm not a child. So the Torah is framing it. Moses is framing this, that this is the Torah to the Jews as they're going off into Israel and into a complicated life that's going to distract them time and again from their experience of leaving Egypt and receiving the Torah. It says, this is who you are. It is your inheritance. It flows to you naturally. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you pursue it. I hope you try to acquire more of it, but it's going to come to you whether you like it or not. As I said, Moses goes from tribe to tribe, and we're not going to pick apart, although we could, I guess, and that's maybe one of the things we could start doing in the coming year if we're going to continue with Torah portions, is to get a little bit more text-based, because now it's just been me, and I very rarely show you text. But I want to just pick out at least one of the blessings that resonates, I think, with relevance to our lives, going, until this very day. Although everything in Torah is relevant to our lives. There are 12 tribes, and so some of the names we're more familiar with, Judah, Judaism, and Levi. Reuben, maybe just because Reuben, the name persisted, even we don't know too much about who Reuben was. Two of the ones that probably didn't make it big on, I think, in the normal culture of Jewish mindset, too, are Yisachar and Zvulun. So Yisachar as a name in some communities has persisted, but I never had a friend Yisachar. And nor did I have a friend Zvulun, although that also persisted very little. Zebulun. So you probably find that in by the Amish more than by Jews. So Issachar and Zvulun, Issachar was older than Zvulun, and Issachar was what they were as a tribe, as a person, but then as a tribe, they were scholars. And like they mastered in those days, we're talking about a couple of thousand years ago, they mastered the understanding the solar system. So the Jewish calendar was guided and approved always by the Issachar tribe, and Torah scholarship. This was their thing. Bookworms, it's called that. Zvulun is blessed as being entrepreneurs, ships and selling merchandise and being out on the high seas, and they had resources, natural resources in their area of Israel. They were business people, entrepreneurs, and they are much more familiar, I guess, to us in a lifestyle. Now, Yisachar and Zvulun, it says, had a partnership, and the idea exists until today. If you Google Yisachar and Zvulun, you'd find a bunch of those things, a bunch of the partnership idea, because the Yisachar-Zvulun partnership was that Zvulun said to Yisachar, listen, I don't, my job in life, my skill, our skill is to be out there and be entrepreneurs. If we're entrepreneurs, we're not going to have that much time for Torah study. You're shlomazels when it comes to business, but you're good with this Torah study. So we want to make a little bit of a partnership with you. We'll help support you so you can study Torah. And this way we'll have a stake in the beauty of your Torah study. So there is an idea that's it's a good fundraising tool, but it's out there. It's been out there for thousands of years, and it's certainly out there very much today. Also, not so much in Chabad perhaps, but this a partnership of Yisachar and Zvulun where people who appreciate Torah study and say, but I just don't have the capacity to do that much. I want to be able to support Torah study in the way I can do it. So I'm now part of that action. But it's most, I think, where I was going most, I think, relevant to us here is that Moses blesses them in age order, but when it comes to Zvulun, he blesses, and Yisachar, he blesses Zvulun before Yisachar. Yisachar was one in the sibling pecking order. He was one older than Zvulun, but Zvulun is mentioned first, and then afterwards Yisachar. Why is Moses mentioned Zvulun first? And the idea is he wants to drive home the idea that even though one might think that Zvulun is that the primary thing is the Torah study, and Zvulun is just a support. So he supports that for the primary thrust of Torah study, which is Yisachar's endeavor, and there's absolute truth to that, because Torah is a premier value to us. Moses gives precedence to Zvulun over Yisachar, say that Yisachar needs to recognize that as much as he's a Torah scholar, and he feels really good about it, and he's given the luxury of being able to pursue this beautiful life of uncovering deeper layers of meaning. Yisachar needs the humility to recognize that without Zvulun, that's not possible. Just can't do it. So Moses gives a precedence to the supporter, Torah supporter, over the actual rabbi, a Torah scholar, and saying that there has to be a balance in the respect here, not just say that everything's about the Torah scholar, and then we're all support staff. There's great value in what Zvulun is doing, and the fact that he's or the person has the wisdom and the generosity to share it, and he's mentioned first when it comes to the blessings. God then tells Moses that you're going to die now. He said, I want you to go up to a mountain. The mountain is called Mount Nebo. And the Torah describes it as being in Moab. Moab is, I would say today, probably southern Jordan. And it says facing Jericho, which would probably be a little bit northwest of Moab. And no one knows where he is. And the Torah says, God buried him himself with the divine kiss. I'm trying to talk about it in a minute. And he's going to be buried. So he goes up alone. And the Talmud tells us that Moses, he really thought he was going to make it into Israel because he's Moses and he's done so much good. So he blew it here and there, but he thought God's going to let him in, and then he can die in Israel. And he was pushing back at God and saying, no, your Torah says you have to pay your workers. The pot of gold at the end of my rainbow was to get into Israel. Where's fairness? And God tells him, there are a few different midrashic framing of this, but one of the things God tells him, we're told that God tells him is, I knew where you were going with this and begging me to get into Israel. I made an oath that you will not get into Israel. And I can't let that, I can't break my oath. So Moses tells him, we have ways to absolve you of an oath. But he says, I made two oaths. One is that you're not going into Israel, and the other one is that I will never allow the Jewish people to be destroyed. If I'm ready to absolve oaths, I want them both absolved. And Moses said, no, then I'd rather die in the desert. Just protect the language is, let 1,000 Moses die in the desert, and the Jews should still have your protection going through history. So he goes up the mountain, and interestingly, the language of the Medrash is God says to him, "Come, my daughter." And Moses is framed as a daughter a few times. It's just an interesting insight that's probably beyond the scope of this conversation. But the femininity there, this idea of spirituality and femininity is there. But clearly he's a guy, and he was someone's son, son to parents. But it goes, "Come, my daughter," and it says, "Lay down, straighten your legs, close your eyes," and then it says, God kissed him, and that was the way his soul left his body. Just breathed back into God, so to speak. And it's that type of passing is also what Miriam, his oldest sibling, his sister, had, and Aaron all had this. What's called in Hebrew, it's called misas neshikin, and neshika is a kiss. That was smooth. And smooth in the sense that, and we may have discussed this in the past, because I certainly have mentioned it in different venues. In Talmudic thinking, passing is, from the human condition, is disorienting to a soul, because we're all used to being us, body and soul. We don't see differentiation within us. And now when the soul moves on from the body, all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's me, but I'm me. There's that corpse there. So there is something a lot in Jewish thinking about trying to bring peace to the soul during this time of disorientation. If there's some Hebrew school thing going outside my window, if that's disturbing you, I'll close the window. Anybody is bothered? Nobody hears it. Okay, only I'm bothered by it. No problem. So the idea, and a lot of our in preparing the body is to try to bring comfort to the soul in this difficult time. One of the things it says in the Talmud is that the more we identify ourselves with our body, the more disorienting it is, which you can imagine. If I see myself as, my self-image is my biceps and my triceps, and now I'm not biceps and triceps, they're there on the table. Who am I? If we see ourselves more as in our relationships and our spirit, the transition is eased more. And so the idea of the passing with a kiss, the passing of the righteous, is that it's the soul moves on, but without the disorientation, just brought into the beauty of the divine. And Moses was gifted that special form of passing. The last 8 verses in the Torah I'd mentioned, I think before, maybe not. There's a debate in the Talmud as to who wrote them, because it says Moses died. Who wrote that? So one opinion is that Joshua wrote those, but also before Moses went up the mountain, because once Moses is on the mountain, it doesn't come back down. So all these things were written. But I think a predominant view also in the Talmud, and then taken forward, is that Moses wrote them, but God told him what to write, and he wrote them with tears in his eyes. He's writing about it. He's writing his own obituary, his own passing. And Moses is spoken about in the last few verses as that no one had ever. And since then, before him and after him, no one had that level of clear communication and connection with God as Moses. He was unique in that way. And speaking about all the things he did for the Jewish people, and the last 3 words are for the eyes of all the Jewish people, what he did in bringing us out of Egypt and taking us through the desert, to bring us to the Torah, taking us to the desert and to the cusp of Israel. So I'll just throw in something else here I mentioned yesterday in Shul. There's I may have mentioned, I think I did mention when we it must be a couple of months ago, when we read about Aaron's passing. The Torah says that that when Aaron passed away, the entire household of Israel mourned him. It means men, women, and children. It means there was a totally encompassing mourning for him. And the reason we're told is because Aaron was his primary thrust of his life is that he was a person of kindness and love, and he worked hard very much within the people and trying to patch up relationships and breaches in relationships, whether it was spouses, business partners, friends. He wanted to try to increase peace, and therefore it says everybody, there was this feeling, a general feeling of love for him and a loss at his passing. Contrast that with Moses. When Moses passed away, it says that the sons of Israel, Bnei Israel, which means it's a use for Jews in general, but technically it means the sons of Israel. So it doesn't even say all the sons of Israel. So it's Aaron, certainly his passing that made a much bigger splash. And Rashi, the primary commentary in the Torah, notes that when Aaron passes away, and it's definitely to Aaron's credit, and he's remembered in that way going forward. At the same time, now in this Torah portion, which we're going to read Wednesday, when it comes to the Torah. So first of all, the Torah uses this language that the Bnei Israel, that the sons of Israel mourned him when he passed. So, for someone who, it's not difficult to see the difference between how the language between here and when Aaron passed away. If the Torah wanted to be a little gentler, because you're writing, this is his eulogy, you could say Moses was mourned. You don't have to underscore that it wasn't as broad a splash as when Aaron passed away. And the most curious thing is that Rashi here comments about how great Aaron was. He says So, we're talking about Moses passing away, and people mourned him, and he says, yeah, it's this, but Aaron, everybody mourned him, which is, it always bothered me, actually. It's like, let the guy die in peace, why do you have to bring that up? And Shabbos morning, I was looking just around this, and I saw something that the Rebbe had said. I asked that question. I was 14 years old at the time, and it was Shabbos Chol Moed Sukkos. I wouldn't have been in New York. I'm not sure I would have understood it when I was there anyway at 14. But he asked that question, and I'm going to offer his insight into it in brief anyway. Says Moses' life was devoted to truth, bringing the Torah of truth, and bringing truth to the world. And truth is a value. It's a Torah value. Falsehood is something Torah says to stay away from. Now, Aaron was also a person of truth. Aaron was, when it comes to an objective of peace and making people feel emotionally respected and connected and keeping relationships whole, sometimes it's okay Torah-wise, and you have to be careful with this. Sometimes between the value of truth and the value of peace, it's okay to not say the whole truth. So if someone says, "How do you like this on me?" If they just bought it, you can say, "Nice color," or whatever it is. If you don't like the suit or the dress, you don't have to say, "Ooh, that's terrible," because they bought it, and unless you think you're really saving them from embarrassment outside, right? So then there's a debate in the Talmud. Hillel says, to every bride we say, "This is a beautiful and gracious bride," and Shammai says, "No, say the truth," because Shammai was allergic to deception, and Hillel didn't like deception. But Hillel would say, there's a Yiddish expression that a liegen tamen sagen. You're not allowed to say a lie, but the ganze emes darf nicht sagen. But you don't always have to say the whole truth. You say, if I'm trying to mediate between people and say, "Well, you just spoke to him. What did he say?" If the guy said, there's a terrible schmuck, and let's say he said that, I said he's upset, and something, but I think he really wants to make up, because I can do that. I don't have to say that he said horrible things about you. Now, not that Moses had no tact, but Moses was devoted to truth. And therefore, Aaron, who was devoted to peace, he wasn't a hardliner on no deception like Moses. And Moses did what he was being who he needed to be. But now, as he passed away, and they're completing the Torah, he wanted for his legacy to go forward. He wanted the Jews to know, when it comes to peace, that I did what I needed to do. But don't emulate me. Go with Aaron. So he wrote down the language of, it was the sons of Israel. And Rashi is not being disrespectful to Moses when he writes it there, according to what the Rabbi said. Rashi is spelling out what Moses' message was. I did what I needed to do. I was God's representative on earth. I tried my best. I gave you the Torah. I did a lot of good stuff. You can emulate me, but not when it comes to the hard line on truth. That's different people. But what you saw there, what Aaron did, that's the general North Star. Try to keep relationships whole. Never, don't lie. But don't excuse lack of tact by saying, or something offensive by saying, "Just being honest." Don't be so honest. Be caring, and see if you can stay away from a lie and still be caring. Anyway, that's those two Torah portions. As I said, we have Yom Tov coming up. That will be Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday is Yizkor. every Shmini Atzeres is Yisker. And Wednesday is, and we're dancing with the Torah is Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday morning. Simchas Torah. And it's a time for us to be happy. Now, someone sent me a message here.